How's it going, guys? The time has finally come for me to make my waifu tier list. I've been kind of on the fence about as to whether or not I want to make one of these, but at the end of the day, I am an FGO tuber, and this video is kind of a staple in the field, so I thought, why not? So I'm gonna man up, I'm gonna take the death threats I receive as a result of this video head on, and hopefully everyone has a good time. And please, as I always say with these kind of videos, don't take it too seriously, it's just my opinion. But yeah, quick disclaimer, this is just my opinion, and these rankings in no way invalidate how you feel about a particular servant. I'll be the first to admit that a lot of my reasons for liking or disliking some servants are completely arbitrary, and that's okay. You don't need a reason to like or dislike something, it's just like food. Just because you like spicy food doesn't mean it's wrong for others to love or hate it, and vice versa. On that note, I've changed the tier list so that the tier that was originally labeled trash is now labeled as recycle. Because, like I said, just because I like a servant doesn't mean they're trash, and I do think every servant does deserve to be loved by somebody. So, anyways, with that out of the way, let's move on to my subjective tier list. I won't initially be paying much attention to the order I place the servants of the same tier, but I will go back after we've ranked everyone and reorganize it so it is in a more exact order. So I'm going to start off by getting Kama out of the way, because as my profile picture probably makes very apparent, she is SS tier. Like I said, I'm going to try and be concise with most of my rankings, but since this is Kama, I kind of feel the need to explain my reasoning a little more in depth. So to explain why I like Kama so much, I first need to get into why I like Sakura so much. So up until recently, Sakura was my favorite character in the Nasuverse. There are multiple reasons for this, but the most significant one has to do with her upbringing, I think. For those of you who haven't read the Fate Stay Night visual novels, I'll spare you the spoilers, but the TLDR is Sakura has like a extremely messed up and horrific life. And because of this, I've always viewed Sakura as a character that deserves to be loved and deserves to be happy, particularly when you take into account the really kind disposition she has despite her circumstances. And this is all relevant to Kama because, to me at least, Kama is supposed to be representative of all the negative aspects of Sakura's life. Kama has a fairly tragic backstory, but more than that, I feel like she's portrayed as an extremely misunderstood character for the most part. Despite how she comes across on a surface level, she does have that desire to be accepted and loved, and while I would still describe her as being evil within the context of the Yoku event, I do genuinely believe she does what she does with selfless intent, even if it is extremely misguided. So much like the character she's based off of, my fondness of Kama comes from my desire to see her have a happy ending. Plus, Sakura, or Dark Sakura, is just an extremely cool concept in general, so any servant based off that is already off to a strong start. But yeah, anyways, that's about 25% of my reasoning for liking Kama. The other 75%, well, Anyways, long tangent aside, easy SS tier if I can find her on the tier list. And from here on out, we're just going to go in order of how this person has set up the tier list, which I think is roughly when they came out, but I'm not 100% sure. So we're just going to put one version of Kama there, and put the other one up there as well. So next up we have Salter. Great design, not only is she really cool in her source material, but FGO manages to flesh out her personality in a way that makes her surprisingly endearing. So I'll put her 4-star variant in B tier to start us off here. So next we have Altoria Lancer Alter. So to me, she's just the worst version of both the Lion King and Salter. She's just both those characters put together basically with no backstory whatsoever, so that's an easy D tier for me. Anastasia. It's been a while since I've done Lost Belt 1, but I distinctly remember liking Anastasia. She has a very likable personality, and her design is very aesthetically pleasing. I particularly like the whole Snow Queen aesthetic she's got going on, so that's a A tier from me. Anne and Mary. Admittedly, these servants don't have much of a presence in my cognition. However, the few times I do recall seeing them in the story and events, I remember liking them. Also, I think as a pair, they're really cute together, so I'll throw this pair in C, I guess. Altoria, the OG Fate Stay Night waifu. While I do find Saber's personality to be kind of bland at times, I feel like it's played up in such a way that it's easy to find that aspect of her endearing. Also, I think out of all the love interests Shiro has in the original visual novel, Saber is the one I ship him with the most. Like, Saber's route really pulled on my heartstrings throughout the Stay Night novel, so that's easy S tier from me. Lion King. While she's technically just an alternate version of Altoria with less character development, I guess, I've always really loved her design and thought she was a perfect antagonist in Camelot. There's not really any objective reason for this, I just think she's really cool, and I'm gonna put her in S tier. Wu. Honestly, I can't even remember Wu's name half the time, plus I'm not 100% sure if she's a child or not, so we're gonna throw her in the FBI tier. Astolfo. I'm so glad this tier list included Astolfo. I don't care what your sexual orientation is, Astolfo is the pinnacle of both femininity and masculinity, and anyone who claims they don't love Astolfo is just flat out lying. So we're gonna throw my beast of a waifu in SS tier. Nyotter. I honestly don't have any strong opinions regarding her personality. She's really cute, but that only gets you so far in most situations, at least as far as I'm concerned, so I'm gonna throw her in B tier. Adelante. This might be a hot take, but I actually think she's a tier lower than Nyotter. I love her design, but the main image I have of Adelante comes from Apocrypha, and the writers of that show kind of went out of their way to make her a really unlikable character, at least that's how I felt. So I'm gonna put her in C tier. Altera. I'm not overly fond of FGO Altera, but I do adore the version of Altera from the extra games. I think Kaiju Altera is genuinely one of the most lovable characters in the Fate franchise, and I'm gonna throw Altera in the S tier just for that. BB. BB is my OG FGO waifu, and I would say she's still tied with Kama for first, honestly. There's just something about BB's presence that immediately makes any scene she's in like 10 times better, and she's without a doubt the best Kohai, even if Mosh is a close second. I could get into another long rant about why I love her like I did with Kama, but since we have like a million more servants to go, I'm just gonna cut this short and throw her and Summer BB in the SS tier. Penthesilea. Despite having to double check how to properly say her name before this video, I actually really like her. I remember when I first started playing FGO, I used a friend's Pinth like I was a drug addict hitting up a joint. She's, unfortunately, one of the weakest characters in terms of like their story presence, but her appearance in events has always been a pleasant surprise, and while I don't like her as much as I did when I first started playing FGO, she's still an A tier for me. Boudica. I'm sorry if you're a Boudica fan, but she's left no lasting impression on me. In fact, I don't think I'm saying her name correctly, and I don't even care enough to go look it up. I think there are worse servants in the game design-wise, so I'll at least throw her in D tier, but she's definitely not one of my favorites. Umu Bride. I love Umu. Pretty much any character from the extra games holds a special place in my heart. But FGO Nero is great even in her own right, so if we're going to put Altera in S tier, I think it's only fitting that we also put both Neros in S tier as well. Just a quick side note, I am in the habit of saying her name the Japanese way, which is why I'm not pronouncing it Nero, so sorry about that. Brynhild. She's really cute. I've always thought she was one of the most well-designed servants in the game. Personality-wise, she's not one of my favorites, but I still feel like she deserves to be in A tier just based on her design alone. So this version of Carmilla I'm not overly fond of. I think her design looks kinda dated, and she hasn't really left any lasting impression on me. I'm going to put her in D tier, but I will say this is the first servant where my opinion of her and her other variant differ really drastically. Scheherazade. So this is one of the few characters I absolutely detest. Let me reiterate that I'm not saying she's a bad character, and if you like her, I totally respect that. However, for whatever reason, this is one of the few characters that just annoys me no matter what she does. It's like the opposite of how I described BB. As soon as Scheherazade enters a scene, it immediately gets 10 times worse for me. I will say though, I like her relationship with Nitocris. I think it's really cute when the two are together, but sadly I can't rank her based on her relationship with another servant and nothing else. So this is unfortunately going to be the first servant I'm going to put in the recycle tier. Hopefully someone with a better palette will enjoy her, but I do not, so sorry about that. Cha-Cha! Cha-Cha is adorable, but I have no doubt that she is underage. Easy FBI tier. Cleopatra. I had an obsession with Cleopatra when I first started playing the game. I still think she's aesthetically one of the best servants in the game, but personality-wise, I'm not overly fond of her. Cleo is basically the equivalent of going on a date with someone who ends up talking about their ex the entire time, which, I've never had that experience, but it doesn't sound fun, so that's gonna be a C tier for me. Leonardo. Leonardo is great, but I absolutely hate her original design. It looks really uninspired to me, and I think her design is inferior to Baby Da Vinci in literally every way. That being said, it's still Da Vinci, and I'm gonna throw her in B tier just out of respect for her character, but like I said, I think the design is just overall worse than the other one. Daon. Daon is just a really forgettable character to me. They don't really show up in any story content outside of Pseudo Singularity 2, and honestly, I can't even begin to tell you what their personality is like. D tier. Drake. Drake is a weird character for me. She's a extra character, and her design really isn't that bad, but just by virtue of being Shinji's servant, I have a immediate distaste for her. I think her own merits work to elevate her beyond just being Shinji's servant, but that's still a black mark I can't overlook, and I still sadly will be placing her in the D tier, but just know if it weren't for that, she would be much higher on the list. Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a hard character to rank. If you were to take this tier list literally as characters you'd want to date and or be married to, she'd be an easy recycle tier for me. I'd honestly rather shoot myself in the head than wake up next to Elizabeth every day. That being said, I interpret this tier list more as a generic how much do you like a character kind of thing. That being the case, I actually would put Elizabeth in the A tier. I don't like this character in a romantic sense, but I do think she's a well put together character that adds value to any scene that she's a part of. She's annoying, but it's in the same way that Saber is bland. It's played up in such a way that you can't help but find her kind of endearing, so like I said, I'll put her in A tier. Enkidu, I have no strong opinions of Enkidu. Their design is neither good nor bad, and nothing from the story really sticks out to me when I try to think back on Enkidu's role. D tier. Uriel. While she's not my favorite character, I think they portray her in a fairly serviceable light in the story. Plus, her relationship with that one berserker was really endearing, so I'm gonna put her in C tier. Frankenstein. Frankenstein is adorable. I remember her being one of my favorite characters in Apocrypha, and I wish she got more recognition than she does. I think one of the more charming aspects of her is the grunting, ironically enough, which the summer variant does away with, but even still, I think that only brings it down a single rank, so I'll give them S and A tier respectively. Gorgon, I think I see her as just an angrier Medusa, which kinda does away with much of the appeal Medusa has in the first place, so she's a D tier for me. 100 Personas. I like the Hassans, but I genuinely forget 100 Personas exist sometimes. To me, this is pretty unforgivable considering she's a major character in Camelot. For her to get so much screen time and only leave a minor impression on me is kind of unfair to all the other servants. So I'm actually going to put her in the recycle tier just because, like I said, it's pretty unforgivable that you spent literal hours with this character and I cannot remember anything about her. So Serenity has a lot going for her. She kind of has a tragic backstory in the sense that anyone that gets like physically close to her dies. And she does have a really sweet and endearing personality, plus she's pretty much FGO's like premier yandere. So I'm gonna give her an A tier. Helena. I don't particularly like Helena, to be honest. There's nothing necessarily wrong with her character, but there's something off about putting a servant that looks like a child in like kind of the role of a grandma, at least like personality wise. So I just never liked her. D tier. X. X is a great character, and the only reason I'm not going to rank her higher than I am is because I can't help but compare her to X Alter, and comparatively, I find Alter to be a much more aesthetically pleasing and endearing character. She's still a solid B, but again, since I do compare her to X Alter, that is all I can give her. Ibaraki. I adore Banana. I love Oni characters in general, so Ibaraki would probably make it to the A tier just based on that fact alone. But in addition to that, she also is one of the most fun characters in the game. I can't think of a single scenario where Ibaraki's addition to the story doesn't immediately make it better. Plus, her dynamic with shooting is one of the best in the game. I know I said I wouldn't adjust Shihi's role based on her interaction with Naito, but this is different since you almost never see Ibaraki and shooting not together. So that's an easy S tier from me. Ooh, Okita Alter. I think she's aesthetically really cool, but I honestly don't know that much about her. Just based on the coolness factor, I'll place her in B tier, but truthfully, I can't say too much about her to begin with. Parvati. Parvati. Or as I sometimes affectionately refer to her as Bread. She's basically Sakura, so it should come as no surprise that I rank her fairly high. However, I view her and Kama as being two halves of a whole, kind of like how Ishtar and Erishkigal together are the embodiment of Rin. That being said, I think Parvati's half doesn't really work as well as a standalone character. Yeah, she's sweet and kind like Sakura, but that's it. She's just really generic and boring to me. She's still easily an S tier, but that's her piggybacking off of being a Sakura face, not something that she's necessarily earned off of her own merits. Osakabe Hime. Osakabe is a living meme machine, and that's all I really need to say about her, S tier. Mecha Ellie. While Mecha Ellie is basically Elizabeth, there's something about her being a mecha that makes everything she does immediately 100 times cuter to me. This is particularly prevalent when it comes to, say, her facial expressions. While I may like Elizabeth ironically, there's something about Mecha Ellie's robotic blush that just really pulls on my heartstrings. She's still the same rank as Elizabeth, but my fondness of her is completely unironic in nature, so same tier, but for different reasons. Cersei. While I love Cersei's design, she's another good example of a servant that just never really made a lasting impression on me. I can't even begin to guess what she's like personality-wise, despite having seen her in the story, so C tier. Neza. Neza is a character I forget exists a lot, but I do respect her for her role in Lost Bolt 4, so I will throw her in C tier just out of that respect. Shiba. This is our second meme queen on the list. However, ignoring her role as like comedic relief, I do find her to be pretty fun and endearing. Plus, Shiba has one of the most gorgeous designs in the game. I don't even really need to think about it too much. SS tier from me. Abigail. Obviously, Abigail is on the FBI list, but I would be remiss if I didn't express how much she's grown on me as a character. I used to not really understand the appeal of Abigail, but her Pancake song is a genuine like S tier banger. It's right up there with like Africa and We Are Number One, and if you disagree with me, you're obviously deaf. This character needs no real explanation as to how great she is, but like I said, she is still in the FBI tier. Erishkigal. Arish was my favorite Rin face for the longest time. She used to be right behind BB and Kama in my waifu rankings, but as time went on, I started to find her character a little bland. I'm not sure why, I guess my tastes have just gradually shifted over time. That being said, she's still S tier to me, and not only that, but I think she's essentially the highest ranking servant in the S tier, essentially making her the gatekeeper for SS tier. Santa Altera, basically just Altera, but her design isn't nearly as good to me, so we're just gonna throw her down a single tier. Hokusai. I really like the traditional Japanese look Hokusai has. I don't like her third form all that much, but ignoring that, there really isn't anything negative I can say about her. Thought she was really enjoyable in everything she's been in so far, and definitely think she deserves to be at least A tier. My initial ranking was S, but I just don't think she deserves to be in the same tier as some of the other servants in S tier, so that's why I ultimately decided to relegate her to A tier. Semiramis. I really enjoyed her as a character in Apocrypha, but she doesn't really have a presence outside of that. Her design is really pretty, but I only feel comfortable putting her in the B tier. I just don't feel any real attachment to this character. Asagami. I'm gonna be real with you, I had no idea this character was in the game, but now that I've looked at her, her second ascension is cute as hell, and I would blow all my Saint Quartz in a heartbeat trying to get a copy of her. I'm going to throw her in the... Ilya. Despite her actual age, you already know where Ilya's going. FBI tier. Mama Homunculus. I can't really remember her that well in Fate Zero, but she is really cute, and she's one of the few MILFs we have in FGO, so I will relegate Mama Homunculus to B tier. Ishtar. Believe it or not, I used to hate her design. However, fairly recently I've started finding feet a lot less revolting. While I'm not quite at the point of having a foot fetish, I still find myself looking at Ishtar and thinking, dang, she's got some cute feet. I also used to dislike her personality, viewing her as a less wholesome Erishkigal, but now I just view her as a more interesting Erishkigal. Yeah, she's not nearly as sweet as her sister, but that's what I like about her. Introducing her to any scenario immediately amps up the spiciness factor by like 10, kind of like how BB does, so I feel like she belongs in SS tier, just barely above her sister. Jack. Jack is the easiest FBI tier on this list. Let me just throw her right in there. Jaguar. I never really got the appeal of this character. They're alright as comedic relief in Babylonia, but there are so many other characters that fill that role better. D tier. Jalter Lily. While she is precious and she is the welfare I want to have a rerun the most, she is still a child and thus will be placed in the FBI tier. Jalter. Jalter has a special place in my heart. I've kind of outgrown her character a bit, but she was my first 5-star and she will always hold a special place in my heart because of that. Plus, there's really nothing wrong with her. I've just come to like some other characters a little more than I liked her. S tier. Jeanne. She's a really dull character, but she was my first Fate waifu and I will always look upon her fondly because of that. Plus, her comic version is freaking hilarious, so A tier. Jing. Listen, I had to look her up right before talking about her, so you already know what that means. Forgettable, really story-relevant character. That's another recycle tier, unfortunately. Again, I apologize if you like her, but one of the worst things you can do in this game for me is have a lot of screen time and then not leave any kind of impression on me whatsoever. Kiara is cute, but she's also kind of a terrifying abomination. While this may initially sound kind of kinky, I do have a sense of self-preservation, and I'm pretty sure her and Kama are like mortal enemies or something, so I'm just gonna put her in trash tier and pretend like I don't actually think she is an A tier waifu. Kiyohime. Kiyohime is basically the embodiment of the idea of a girl that you know is crazy and you want to hook up with anyways. Despite that, she is still really cute, so I will throw both variants of her in B tier. Chloe. Chloe has an awesome design, but she's still a very definitive FBI tier. Saber Lily. I want to like Lily, but she doesn't really stand out to me at all. I really don't have anything to say about her. D tier. Marie. Marie has one of the cutest designs, and I think it's a huge shame she doesn't get more appearances in the story than she does. She could be an S tier waifu, but as it stands now, Delightworks needs to flesh out her character a lot more to make her stand out. That being said, I'm going to put her in B tier. Martha. Actually, the exact same opinion I have about Marie for the most part. Really cute character that only has some like really early appearances, and her character doesn't really get developed all that much. I do feel like her design is cuter than Marie's, so I'm gonna bump her up 1 tier, but like I said, I wish she was in the story just a little more. Mosh. I don't think Mosh needs an explanation. She's been with us through thick and thin, she's had the most dynamic character development out of anyone in FGO, and she's a cute little eggplant. SS tier, because I know I would be burnt at the stake should I suggest otherwise. Matahari. I want to like Matahari, but I don't really have a reason to have any strong opinion on her either way. She's just kind of there, you know. I know Sheen is really fond of her, and his video explaining why is really wholesome, so I'll give her B tier for that alone, but in terms of like my initial opinions on her, I don't really think she stands out. I'm sorry. Meb, or as my friend keeps calling her for some ungodly reason, Medb. My experience with Meb almost perfectly parallels my feelings about Ishtar. I hated her until I didn't. I think my exposure to Ishtar and Meb has gradually awoken some kind of weird fetishes in me, and I Not necessarily happy about that, but I can't deny Meb has kicked her way into the S tier. Plus, her Spiritron dress from the Idol event is absolutely adorable. Medea. Medea has the same tragic backstory, so I want her to have a happy ending thing going on that a few other servants have. However, I don't really care about her to the same extent that I do some other characters. She is really cute though, and her relationship with her master in Unlimited Blade Works is pretty endearing, so I'll throw her an A tier. Medea Lily. This is just a worse and more derpy looking version of Medea to me, C tier. Medusa. I used to have a neutral opinion on Medusa, but after reading Heaven's Feel, I've come to like her a lot. I think it's really sweet the extent that she cares about Sakura, and she really goes above and beyond her duty as a servant to try and help Sakura out, so A tier. Medusa Lily. I like her, but I'm pretty sure she's FBI tier, so we're just gonna go ahead and throw her right in there. Melt. I like Melt a lot, but her base design has always looked kind of weird to me. I could put her in S tier, but I think I'll reserve that for her summer variant and just put normal Melt in A tier. Exalter. I've already talked about Exalter a little bit. Her personality is one of my favorite, and I think 2 of her 3 Ascensions are among the best designs in the game. She is a very definitive SS tier for me. Mordred. Mordred is a good character, but I think I still have some leftover resentment for what she does to one of my other highly ranked characters in Apocrypha. So I'm going to put her in B tier, mainly for that. Musashi. I really like Musashi, but she's one of those characters I really have to be in the mood to really appreciate. It's kind of like jalapenos on pizza, I guess. Sometimes it's a little too much, but other times it's exactly what you're craving. One day I might say she's A tier, the next day I'll say she's SS tier. That being said, I think she's usually on the higher end of those 2 ratings, so I'm going to put her on the high end of S tier. Nightingale. I used to not really like Nightingale, but there's another FGO tuber called Muffin that has a really strong fondness of her, and that's really turned my opinion on her around a bit. She's still not my favorite, but I can definitely see the cuter aspects of her now, so I'll at least give her B tier. Nitocris. Oh boy, Nitocris strikes a nice balance of being both memorable and wholesome. She's also akin to Shiba in that her design really elevates her above a lot of the other servants that have a similar disposition to her. I do like her personality a bit more than Shiba, so I think I'll rank her slightly above Shiba in the SS tier. Nobu. I never got the appeal of Nobu. She's an interesting character, but I don't really have that desire to see her more in the story or even just use her servant at all, so D tier. Okita. She's alright. I think her main issue is she's swallowed up by a sea of other sabers in the game, so I've never really had the time to pay that much attention to her. As a result of that, I probably don't appreciate her as much as a lot of other people do, but I still think she's a solid A tier. Artemis. I used to not like Artemis, but for whatever reason, Lost Belt 3 really strengthened my emotional connection to her. It's kind of odd since she's not technically in Lost Belt 5, but I think just hearing Orion's feelings regarding her made me respect both of them as a couple a lot more. B tier. Passion Lips. I want to like her because she's both a Sakura face and a BB alter ego, but they're too big for you. I'm sorry, D tier. Bunyan. I think Bunyan is a child. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll put her in the FBI tier just to be safe. Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is the best One-san, and we will be giving her the respect she deserves by putting her in SS tier. She was probably my favorite character in Babylonia, and given Ishtar is SS tier, that logically puts her a little bit above her in that ranking. Listen, it's a book. I'm sorry if this is your favorite character, but come on. Plus, either way, I'm pretty sure it's also a child, so we're gonna throw that in the FBI and or extra tier. Shiki. I don't know anything about this Shiki, but from what I am to understand, she's just a gender-bent version of Shiki from Tsukihime, which sounds incredibly cool. Her design is also top tier, but since I really don't know anything about her, the highest I'm willing to put her is A tier. Summer Salter. Everything I like about Salter, but now in maid form, A tier. Summer Helena. Everything I said about Summer Helena, but now in a bikini. D tier. Summer Raiko. I'm already kinda on the fence about Raiko in most circumstances, but Summer Raiko is also just too much for me, see? Tomoe. I love her design. I wish she was more useful in game so I could use her more, but that's not really her fault. She also has the huge benefit of being another Oni, so this is an easy A tier for me. I don't like her as much as Ibaraki, but she's still a really cool servant. Chiyome. Chiyome is another character I frequently forget about. Even when I do remember her, I just think of her as a less cool Danzo, so D tier. Danzo, the more cool Chiyohime. I don't know much about her personality, but her aesthetics are really rad, and given the opportunity, I would like to know about her. B tier. Chin, I think she's really cute, but that's about all she's got going for her. She didn't really stand out to me in the story, and she hasn't had much of a chance to develop as a character since then, so C tier. Valkyries. I don't really have a strong opinion on them. I think they're conceptually really cool, but there's nothing inherently waifu about them. So, aside from really liking their VAs, I'm still going to put them in C tier. Summer Jean. Everything I said about Jean still applies here, but her swimsuit design is really cute, and it's hard not to like someone that uses dolphins as a weapon. So I feel like that does elevate her to S tier. Summer Ibaraki. I actually like this design less than Ibaraki's base form, but it's not enough for me to move her down a tier, so we're still going to put her in S tier. Ushi. Ushi is an example of a servant I really want to like, but her design just completely prevents me from doing so. Thankfully, I find her summer variant a lot easier on the eyes, so I think she at least deserves a B tier in her summer variant. Summer Jalter. It's Jalter but in a bikini. I don't think it's better or worse than her original, so I'll just give it the same rank. Summer Meb. Same exact opinion as Jalter. I do like her hat a lot, but that's not enough for me to move her up an entire tier, so S tier. XX. My brain just pairs her and X together for whatever reason. Like, yeah, they're different, but I can't really, bring myself to separate them as characters in my mind. So I'm just gonna throw her in B tier with X. Sidonai. Sidonai is adorable, but I still think she qualifies as FBI territory, so we're just gonna leave her in there. Caster Shootin'. I'll get more into Shootin' in a bit, but for now, just know I hate this design despite loving Shootin' herself, so C tier specifically for Caster Shootin'. Consort U. I don't like Consort U just because I feel like she was a super underutilized character. She, as well as Lost Belt 3 as a whole, had super good setup, but it never really went anywhere. She could have been one of the best antagonists in FGO, and ultimately she just felt like any other crypter. C tier. Bradamante. I don't know if that's actually how you say her name. I think it might be Bradamante, but Bradamante is very fun to say, so I'm going to continue to say it. Please excuse me. But I adore Bradamante, even if she is one of the worst 5 stars in the game. I adore Bradamante, even if she is one of the worst 5 stars in the game. She's also one of the cutest servants in the game, and you don't need to go to a bakery for cake as long as she's around, so I mean, it's an easy A tier from me. Santa Quetzalcoatl. I just think this is a more poorly designed version of her original form. B tier. Benny. I think Benny is a child. It's hard to say, but again, we're gonna be safe and just put her in FBI tier. Miyu? FBI open up. Easy placement. Murasaki. I think her design is very meh, but she has a Konosuba VA, which does help elevate her just a little bit, so I will put her in C tier. King Protea. Protea is the most precious kaiju to ever exist, and I easily consider her to be the best BB alter ego. SS tier. Reynes. I don't know much about the servant version of Reynes, but I did love seeing her in case files. It was particularly amusing watching her rip apart Waver as a little kid, so we're gonna throw her in S tier. Luvia. I have conflicting opinions regarding Luvia. I absolutely love her in case files and Unlimited Blade Works, but when it comes to Prisma Ilia, I find her very annoying. Regardless, as a whole, I do like her, and I'm gonna put her in A tier. Gray. Gray is cool and all, but I don't really recall her having much of a personality in case file. I definitely have a positive opinion of her, but I didn't find her to be anything special, so C tier. Santa Alter, it's Salter, but she sings Paroru. Scotty, I don't typically have a thing for more MILF-oriented servants, but for whatever reason, I really found Scotty to be like a comforting presence throughout the story. I can't really articulate why this is, but I feel like she deserves S tier. Really underappreciated servant in terms of personality, at least as far as I'm concerned. Scott's a hot. If Scotty is the loving and comforting mom, then Scott's a hot is the hot and kind of spicy mom. I like her a lot, but I don't have as much of an emotional attachment to her as Scotty, so I'm just gonna put her in A tier. Shootin'. Best Oni? As long as you can look past her wanting to turn you into human sake, she's an easy SS tier waifu. Steno. So this tier list is supposed to be based predominantly on a servant's looks and personality. However, I can't bring myself to like her because of how often this servant spooks me for whatever reason. I've tried to look past that for the sake of this rating, but I really can't bring myself to like her. It's not her fault, but I'm still gonna throw her in the recycle tier. Suzuka. I never read Foxtails, so I can't really say that much about her. She's cute, but as I stated before, that only gets you so far in most situations, so B tier. Tamamo. Tamamo is essentially like my starter Pokemon as far as Fate is concerned. My first experience with Fate was the Fate Extra games, and Tamamo was the servant I picked for that. That being said, I find that FGO Tamamo is distinctly different from the Tamamo I grew to love in Fate Extra. I could write like an entire essay on why I think FGO Tamamo is different from OG Tamamo, but the TLDR is I think they took a couple of aspects of OG Tamamo, cranked them up to 11, and then made those few aspects her entire character. I'm still going to give her SS tier, but just know that this is me ranking OG Tamamo and not the like FGO era Tamamo. Dogmamo, I don't really get her. She's funny, I guess, but she also kind of represents all the things wrong with FGO Tamamo, so I'm going to throw her in D tier. Ushi. Like I said before, I like Ushi as a person, but her design is so outdated and ugly to me. D tier. Sanzung, while I do like her as a character, I've always found her outfit to be kind of silly. It shouldn't be that big of a deal, but for whatever reason, I can't help but obsess over it, and it kind of ruins the character for me. C tier. Raiko, I want to apologize in advance for this, but I don't really like Raiko that much. Scotty already fills that kind of MILF niche for me, and beyond that, I don't really understand the appeal of this character. C tier. Jinako. I have mad respect for Jinako after Lost Belt 4, but I still don't like the way her servant form is designed. It looks kind of dull to me, and I'd rather use almost any other servant as a result of that. That being said, I want to emphasize I think Jinako herself is a good waifu, but I'm not as fond of the servant version. C tier. Lakshmi. Similar scenario to Jinako in that I really liked her in Lost Belt 4. I do think she has a really cool design though, so I'm going to put her in B tier. Mama Nobu. My opinion of her isn't significantly different from Nobu's, so I'm just going to put her in the same tier as Nobu. Kagetora. She's one of my favorite welfares in the game. I'm pretty indifferent about her personality, but her Spiritron dress is easily one of the coolest outfits in the game, so I'll give her B tier just for that. Gareth. I know basically nothing about Gareth, so it's hard for me to rank her, but she does have one of the most precious looking designs in the game. So assuming her personality somewhat matches her aesthetics, I'm pretty comfortable giving her B tier. Salem. Even though she has an admittedly cute design, I never really had a reason to give her a second look. There's just nothing about her that really stands out to me. D tier. Charlotte. I love Charlotte. She's my favorite friend point and gotcha character. I think she's adorable in Lost Belt 5, and I think her design is really unique and cute. S tier. Da Vinci Lily. I don't know if she technically qualifies as a child, but I've never really seen her that way, so I'm just going to rank her like everyone else. Da Vinci is easily the best supporting character throughout the Lost Belts, and this design really feels like it fits her personality a lot more, so I'm a really big fan of it. This is another easy S tier for me. Berserker Musashi. Pretty much the same as Musashi, but her third ascension is absolutely gorgeous, and I think it would be a crime not to move her up to SS tier just for that. especially considering base Musashi was already bordering on SS tier to begin with. Summer Osakebe. This design is purely poggers, but it's not poggers enough for me to move her up to SS tier, so I'll put her in S tier with normal Osakebe. Carmilla was a fantastic character in Summer 4. I can easily see her being A tier. However, I'm going to take into account that she runs Elizabeth over with a car like half a dozen times, so I'm actually going to move her up to S tier as a reward for that. Summer Melt. I really like Melt, but I ranked her fairly low on the tier list since I've always hated her base outfit. Summer Melt, on the other hand, does not suffer from that same problem. In fact, if Melt wasn't already close to SS tier in her own right, the Penguin Parka alone is enough reason to move her up there, so SS tier. Summer Lion King. This version of Lion King comes off a lot more endearing and personable than her base form does, but it comes at the cost of making her seem slightly less elegant. Either way, I think the trade-off is fairly even, so I'm just going to put her literally right next to her base form. Summer Okita. I actually like Summer Okita less than normal Okita. I think one of Okita's strongest points was her design, and Summer Okita kind of shifts away from it in a way I'm not overly fond of. C tier. Calamity Jane. Jane is just a fun character. She has this really cheerful aesthetic about her that I don't feel like a lot of other servants have, and she seems like she'd just be a fun person to be around, so S tier. Space Ishtar. This is going to be a bit of a hot take, but I actually think Space Ishtar is a tier below normal Ishtar. Her design is just strictly worse than Ishtar's to me. Don't interpret that as me saying it's bad. Her design is still among the best in the game. I just don't think it's nearly as iconic or well crafted as the normal one. But despite that, I still think she's an easy S tier. Christmas Nightingale. I feel the same way about this character as I did with Altera's Christmas variant. It's just a worse version of regular Nightingale. C tier. Europa. I want to like Europa so badly, but her bull just looks so stupid to me. I know that's like a really superficial reason to base her ranking off of, but I genuinely can't think of anything else when someone brings up Europa. C tier. Yang. Okay, so Yang has, without a doubt, the most aesthetically pleasing design in the entire game. It somehow manages to look gorgeous, novel, cute, all these things at the same time. There's not a single servant in FGO I think tops her in terms of design, and she only stands behind Kama and BB in my overall rankings. SS tier. Summer Hokusai. Summer Hokusai really doesn't register as being that much different from regular Hokusai to me, although I did find her to be a bit more personable when compared to original Hokusai. However, I also think her base design is one of her stronger aspects, so Summer Hokusai ultimately ends up being in roughly the same position, I think. A tier. Sei. I'm pretty indifferent about Sei. I don't particularly like the way her traditional and modern aspects juxtapose one another. I don't hate her by any means, but I also wouldn't go out of my way to like roll for her or anything. C tier. Canis. Canis comes across as a really cool and strong character. I like her a lot, like a lot, but the qualities I like about her don't necessarily make her a good quote-unquote waifu. And while I like seeing her in the story, I don't really have the desire to go out of my way and add her to my Chaldea, so I'm just gonna put her in C tier. Discovery, I don't really know a lot about them. I used to really love their design, but as time has gone on and more servants have come out, I just think it's kind of bland now. C tier. Kijo. Bro, it's a dino waifu. I don't know how you can utter that phrase and not immediately put her in S tier. Utsumi. I know literally nothing about this character, but she is cute as a button, and I like what she's got going on with her hair, so I am going to put her in B tier. Castoria. I haven't finished Lost Belt 6 yet, but from what I've read so far, Castoria is a really likable character. She's a lot less bland when compared to Altoria, and she's got this modest underdog vibe going about her that really makes you want to see her succeed, so I'm going to put her in S tier. Summer Kiara. It's Kiara, but she's trying to trick you into thinking she's a harmless fish. Same tier as Kiara. Summer Brynhild. I like this design a lot more than her original, and I also think the Berserker class suits her a lot more, so I'll nudge this variant up to A tier. Summer Consort U. Just because she put on a bikini doesn't mean I'm going to retract all my previous critiques about her. Park your butt right back in C tier. Summer Tomoe. I think this is just a better looking version of Tomoe. Her design looks really unique and that goes a long way for me, so I'll move her up to S tier. Summer Murasaki. I just don't like this design. Murasaki was already pretty low in the rankings for me, but this design is significantly worse than her original. I'm gonna put her in D tier. Himiko. I adore Himiko. She strikes a good balance of being a cool historical figure, but also a good character in her own right. I do think some of her ascensions look kinda goofy, but she's still one of my most sought after servants, and I can't see her anywhere other than SS tier for me. Van Gogh. I only familiarized myself with this servant very recently. While I'm not a fan of any of her designs, I do think her personality is really charming, and it's hard to not want to just give her a steady supply of head pats. So I'm going to put her in S tier. Ritra. She's gorgeous. There's really no other way to put it. I think her design is the second best in the game, only behind Yang's. And there's something about her tail that's just like really adorable to me. I've been praying for her to spook my JP account for a while now, and if we ever get another SSR ticket and she is on it, she is going to be the first thing that I pick. SS tier, right behind Yang. Avenger Ushi. I feel like other servants pull off Avenger Ushi's aesthetic a lot better than she does. Yeah, she's cool and edgy looking, but if that's the kind of servant I'm in the mood for, I'd rather see someone like Jalter. Still, she's got a pretty solid design, so I'm gonna throw her in A tier. Hogan. Hogan just doesn't really do anything for me. Both her design and personality seem kind of basic, and despite having her fully leveled on JP, I don't think I've ever used her. D tier. Karen. Karen is a precious little snowflake that can do no wrong. Anyone that disagrees can fight me, and I'm gonna put her in SS tier. Galatea. As a whole, I really like her, but her color palette really makes it hard to notice any like discernible features about her. All the white just kind of blends together, and I wish they just added a little more color to help emphasize certain part of her designs. So because of that, I'm going to put her in A tier. Miss Crane. Next is Miss Crane, or as I like to call her, Crip Mama. I adore her as a servant, but that's more for gameplay aspects. If we're talking strictly about her personality and design, there's not really that much that pulls me in about her. I think her design is unique and interesting, but there's nothing really attractive about it. I think she deserves to be somewhere in the middle of the pack, so B tier. X-Alter Idol. I have no issue with this design, I just don't think it reaches the same peaks the original does though. It's still pretty solid, so I will give it S tier. Ibuki. Ibuki is probably my least favorite out of all of the Onis in terms of both design and personality. At the end of the day, I'm still gonna rank her really high because I'm a big Oni simp. So I'm gonna have to put her in A tier, I guess, but I do think Ibaraki and Shootin are leagues ahead of her. Morgan. She's a Lost Belt 6 servant, which immediately makes her top tier for me. Almost every servant from Lost Belt 6 is exceptionally written, and Morgan is no exception. Her more dominant queenly personality is definitely attractive, and I can respect that she seems to be family-oriented to some degree. Maybe that's not the best way to describe that aspect of her, but it's cute nonetheless. She's a huge fan favorite among the community, and I'm no exception. SS tier. Fairy Gawain. Fairy Gawain's design isn't super great to me. I still liked her as a character in Lost Belt 6, but her proportions are just a little too much for me to take seriously, and she's gonna be placed in the B tier because of that. Fairy Tristan. In addition to being an Oni simp, I'm also a simp for vampire aesthetics, so Tristan is off to a very strong start in that regard. Even if that weren't the case, she still has one of the most beautifully elegant designs in the game, and I actually think I place her above Morgan in terms of rankings, so SS tier. Fairy Lancelot. Fairy Lancelot is my favorite character from Lost Belt 6. She goes from being one of the sleekest, most badass looking characters with her helmet on to being a precious little gumdrop when she takes it off. I also think her in-game animations are some of the most satisfying ones to look at. I don't know what it is, but you can really feel the power of her basic attacks whenever she's performing them. All in all, she's tied for my third favorite servant in the game. Depending on my mood, I'll say it's her or Yang, so I'll throw her right up in the list right next to Yang. Vitch. Vitch is a great character in her own right, but what really elevates her as a waifu for me is the strong OG Tamamo vibe she gives off. She's definitely a lot more mean-spirited than OG Tamamo, but I still think her personality is a lot more in line than, say, FGO Tamamo, so I'm gonna put her in SS tier. Summer Okita Alter. My main issue with Okita is that she felt kinda lifeless to me, and this version fixes that to a significant degree. Summer Okita feels like she has a lot more personality as well as just general things going on with her. I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about her, but I'm gonna put her in S tier for now. Summer Anastasia. While her design is beyond precious, I don't think it does enough to elevate her past where her original was ranked, so I'm gonna put her in S rank again. Summer Corday. I'm glad Corday got a more useful variant, but I also think this design is just strictly worse than her OG one. What I liked about original Corday is like she had a very novel and unique design, and this one's just kind of generic to me, so I'm actually going to move it down to A tier. Summer Da Vinci. Honestly, I just don't like this design. It's not nearly as charming to me, and I don't really feel like it suits Da Vinci. C tier. Summer Canis. My feelings for her mirror my feelings for regular Canis. C tier. Summer Sei. I actually think they pull off the contemporary looking design of Sei a lot better than her normal variant does. It's still a little off to me, but I like it significantly more, so I'm willing to move her up to B tier. So yeah, this is my final tier list. Again, this is all just a subjective opinion, and a lot of my opinions are just based on arbitrary reasoning. So if you have varying opinions on servants, that's completely okay and valid. I respect that. I don't mean to like belittle anyone's like favorite servants or anything. This is just how I feel about them. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, let me know, and I might look into making more tier lists or something. Who knows? Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again in the next one. Later.